Good afternoon, students. So maybe call all the students from the different campuses, the representative for different campuses. So when I call your campus, please clap your hands and make a sound that you will be recognized. Okay? Most important guest for this afternoon. So I hope that everybody will be very excited to hear what are they going to talk with. And you know the topic is already about stress. So we got to stress nothing. So the students' life always got stress every day? Yes or no? We would like to have two very distinguished guests on for this afternoon for all of you. And these two are from, you know what, these are very important person that they will give us a talk and we will give you some advices on how to, overcome your stress as a student. The first will be from they are both from the University of Caothang in Australia. And for the first speaker that we have now is not new to us because he's our former partner, Asian School or Asian International School partner in an education sector and also in the business sector as well. So, he is the head of international student recruitment from the University of Caothang, Australia, and he is also a business partner before. So, let's all welcome Mr. Hong Chung. I hope that I said it correctly.
Good afternoon. It's really nice to be back. I think the first time I worked with the Asian high school was back in 2002 or 2003, and it's lovely to be back to see how much the school has developed and to see you guys again. Before my colleague Lynn give you a very helpful tips on managing stress, I would like to give you a brief overview of the University of Newcastle. How many of you have heard of us before? Okay. Where is Newcastle? Okay. That's probably a better question. So, Newcastle, we have about 500,000 people, which is a smaller city than Ho Chi Minh City here, which is good. You know why it's good? There's no traffic jam. Okay, so you can move around quite quickly. We are about 2 hours driving north of Sydney, so you can get to Sydney quite easily. And we have a great lifestyle there because I've actually moved there about a year ago, and it's affordable living. I think that's the important thing about Newcastle. Not only is it a fantastic place to live, but it's very affordable. And how affordable is it? So imagine this: if you were to study in Sydney or Melbourne, your living cost will be about 15 to 30% more than Newcastle. Just your living cost alone. So imagine you save all that money over 4 years. What can you do with that money? You can go shopping. You can buy a new car. You can buy whatever, and then I think your parents will thank you. So it just gives you. It's really value for money by being Newcastle. The university is actually about 53 years old. So it started in 1965, and it is the only university in Newcastle. So Newcastle, we are ranked 214 in the world, top 1% in the world. And in Australia, we are top 10 in Australia. Okay, so that speaks volume to the work that we are doing in Newcastle, and also speaks volume to the quality of education that you will get. So again, into the rankings, top 1% in the world, 15 disciplines in the top 200 in the world. So it is a very high-ranking university, not only in Australia, but worldwide. What are we good at? This is what we're good at. Right? Mining, engineering, architecture, nursing, education, business, civil engineering, etc. These are top-notch programs that you can get in Newcastle because, again, they are prestigious. So in terms of the business faculty, our business faculty programs is number 8 in Australia. So you take the whole Australia, and we're in the top 8 of it. Okay. So the University of Newcastle, this is where we are, the main part here. And we have a campus in Sydney that teaches postgraduate programs in business. We have one in the Central Coast and one further up in Port Macquarie. So we have over 37,000 students on campus, and more than 7,000 of them are international students. This is the Caothang campus, the main campus. It is 140 hectares wide. Okay, imagine 140 hectares. I mean, sometimes when I have meetings, I have to drive to those meetings. It is a very, very big campus, but it is a beautiful campus, one that you can walk around and it's very pleasant. In the city of Newcastle, we have a new campus. It's called New Space. So it was opened about a year ago. And this is the picture of that campus, okay? It's a state-of-the-art building. And if you are studying business, this is where you will study. And we teach law and creative industries in this campus. It is a $95 million building funded by the state of New South Wales, the city of Newcastle, and the University of Newcastle. As I mentioned, in between of Sydney and Newcastle, there's a Central Coast campus. We also have one in Singapore. Well, we partner with PSB Academy. So it is possible for you to do your program, part of your program in Singapore, and then come on to Newcastle to finish up your degree. So you get to be in 2 countries by doing one program. Okay, equity and excellence. Many universities can do equity very well. Many universities can do excellence very well. Very few can do both very well. And I'll give you an example. In Australia, we have Indigenous, and I'm sure that you've heard about this before. So in 1986, Newcastle admitted its first Indigenous cohort into the medicine program. And in 1990, we graduated the first Indigenous medicine students, okay? Since then, we have graduated more Indigenous students in the medicine program than all of the universities in Australia combined. This speaks that accessibility and equity is the heart of what we do, yeah? It's not just that the wealthy can go to university, but it is accessible to everybody. Another story I would like to share with you, because in Newcastle, people are very friendly. So about nearly 40 years ago, a family from Newcastle went to China, went to Hangzhou, China. They met a little boy who wanted to practice his English. Yeah? And then since then, they've kept in touch. Yeah? The boy and the family kept in touch. The boy visited Newcastle and vice versa. Today, that boy is Jack Ma, founder of Alibaba. Okay? Actually, that's him here. That's the picture of him there. So because of the friendship, last year, Jack Ma donated $20 million to the university, providing scholarship for the next 10 years, 30 students per year. Again, that is connection and the values that Newcastle has with the outside world. Earlier, I spoke about ranking, right? But as students, ranking may not mean much to you. It's what you learn in the classroom that matters. So in Australia, there is a quilt survey where we survey students from first year and fourth year undergraduate students. So the students have come back and So this is the survey for learning and teaching. This is the Australia average. This is Macquarie and other universities in New South Wales. Newcastle is higher than the universities in New South Wales and higher than the national average. So when you study with us, you will learn because the quality is there. Because all of our academics teach, and that's why it makes it different. It's more survey about student support, employability, okay? This is important, particularly to your parents, because when they send you to school, they want you to be able to work afterwards. Our graduates, domestic or international, 89% of them gets a job within 4 months of graduation, right? Either back in the home country or in Australia. This is what makes us, again, different from the rest. So we have over 100 programs in the undergraduate and postgraduate level. If students need English, we also provide English for them at Newcastle. Where do our international students live? So we have a dormitory, right, based on the main campus that provides support and also high standard of living condition for the students. So it is a single bedroom, and then of course you share the other facilities, okay? And what's more important, we also offer scholarships, which I will leave to my colleague Lynn to tell you about later on. So that's a little bit about Newcastle. If you would like to have more information, later on we will give you flyers. Again, it is 3 things that makes us unique: the quality of education, the ranking, the city itself, and our values that will make us differ from the rest. Okay? I hope you enjoy the next talk because it will be very interesting in helping you managing the stress. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, for the second part of our program for this afternoon is to introduce to you our guest speaker for the talk about stress. Are you excited about it? Yeah. Are you excited about it? Yeah. Sure? Yeah. So what is stress? Can you define stress? Anyone? Can you define stress before we ask Dr. Lin to discuss about us? Do you know how to define stress? Yes or no? Grade 12 student. Yes or no? Okay, very good. Now, so our guest of honor for this afternoon is a lady with a very remarkable academic achievement, a famous researcher and an author of numerous publications in the field of trauma and post-traumatic growth. She is a psychologist by profession and also a distinguished educator. She is an Assistant Dean International for the Faculty of Science and is passionate about creating opportunity for cultural diversity and exchange in academia. Her therapeutic work has spanned over 3 decades, primarily working with those exposed to complex, high-risk environments or political and family childhood trauma. Her master's research considered the long-term psychological effect of war on civilian women, and her PhD research explored the interface between complex trauma and post-traumatic growth in those exposed to war, disasters, and genocide. One of her current research projects considered the interface between the complex trauma and post-traumatic growth, particularly a cultural and family dynamics that influence behavior. She is also a psychosocial trainer with the International Red Cross and has been deployed internationally to assist communities in need of the following catastrophic event. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, help me to welcome Dr. Lee McCormack.
welcome everybody. I'm very pleased to be here today to speak to you all about your very positive careers in the future after school, but also to talk to you a little bit about how to manage your stress when you are studying and when you're managing your lives till you get into your careers, because you've got a few years to go yet. I am an associate professor in the School of Psychology at the University of Newcastle. As Hung has told you, the University of Newcastle is an excellent university that has a lot of close links with industry in the Newcastle region. So the students that come to Newcastle get a lot of exposure and practice while they're doing their programs. There we go. As I said, I'm in the area of psychology, but I'm also the representative for the Faculty of Science. And the Faculty of Science has schools in psychology, in environmental science, and in mathematics. It also has a remediation program for students wanting to do PhDs, but that's later on for you. I'm going to talk about how psychology works for you and how you can help psychology work for you. As a psychologist, I'm now a clinical psychologist as well as an academic, which means that I work with people who have high-end trauma in their life. Now, do you know what I mean by high-end trauma? Complex trauma. What do I mean by that? Yes? You don't know? You do? Yes? No. Right. Anybody else know what complex trauma is? All right, so most of us have a little bit of trauma in our lives. Sometimes we can have a car accident, or we might fail an exam, or we might feel sick or be sick for a long time, and that can be traumatic. We might lose someone might die that we love. Now, all that can be traumatic, but it's not complex trauma. Complex trauma is when somebody is exposed to traumatic events that go on and on and on. So someone who might be living in a war zone, somebody who might be exposed to disasters or catastrophes, someone who as a little child might have been traumatised for some years. So it's about people's suffering that has gone on for a length of time. But my research and my practice is about growth, psychological growth, post-traumatic growth. And that means that many people are very good at taking a traumatic episode in their lives and turning it into a positive experience for them. Not that the experience is positive, but they actually redefine their lives in a way that works for them in a positive way. So they may never have thought of going to university, or they may never have thought of doing something amazing with their family. And because of the trauma, they actually decide to do something that is life-changing. So that's what we mean by post-traumatic growth. I hope you understand that. Stress, on the other hand, is a small part of us being anxious. It's more like anxiety over the ordinary everyday life events. And just to show you what a psychologist can do, this slide shows you me working in a war zone, me working in Aceh after the tsunami, in East Timor after their independence, and there's Africa there as well. And I've gone in to help people build their lives again after they've had a catastrophic event. While we're waiting on that, can anybody tell me what stress is? I'm sure you've all felt it. Do any of you know what it is?
Well, I think to me stress is a feeling of frustration, and maybe sometimes that will go straight to anger when you face something that displeases you in life. And that is that's happened every day. And that's very hard to deal with, and you have to have somebody to help you with it. You cannot go through it alone.
That was an amazing answer, particularly the last bit that said you can't go through it alone. You usually have to share it with someone. You maybe even get some help. Yes. Okay, and everybody can feel different things. And one of the things, of course, that you mentioned is that people can feel angry. People can feel irritated. All right, I think we're ready to start now. That's my family. I just thought I'd show you that. They've all studied at the University of Newcastle. One's done law, medicine, construction management, industrial design, and they've all worked internationally. So that's a good reason to come to Newcastle. It's a very good degree. And that's my little grandson. Okay, stress. We've already had one of your very good students explain what stress is, how we can all feel different things. And students are often experiencing stress and they don't know that that's what they're experiencing, but they feel quite miserable and they're not sure what to do about it. There we go. So I'm going to talk to you about how do we know when we're stressed? What's happening inside the body when we're stressed? And understanding how it works so that we can manage it and make it work for us. What does it feel like? Sometimes people can feel angry and upset. What else can people feel when they're stressed? Frustration, yes? Call out. One at a time. Distress, yes? Distress is different to stress, but yes, distress is when something awful is happening in your life. Anxious, yes? Anything else? Yes, all of that. All right. We can feel panicky sometimes. We might feel irritable. So we're not always the best people to be around because we might be a bit cranky, a bit upset. Our mind is sometimes racing when we've got stress. And we can't organise ourselves very well, which is an important part of managing stress. Anxious and nervous, as was mentioned over here. Sometimes people have trouble sleeping and they can have the opposite. Sometimes they want to sleep too much. We call that avoidance. So they avoid getting on with that next assignment, or they avoid going to the library, or they avoid getting something done that they need to get done because they're feeling anxious. And so they end up wanting to sleep a lot. So you can sometimes not want to sleep or can't sleep. Sometimes you can sleep too much. They can feel tense, ill at ease. Sometimes people feel flat. We sometimes call that depression. Now that can be one of the symptoms of stress overload. Now it doesn't mean that you're clinically depressed. That means that you need medication or anything like that, but it means you're very flat, that you can't quite get on with life in the way you would like to. You're not as happy as you used to be, and you don't laugh as much as you used to. Sometimes we want to run away. We just want to get out of there. We just want to not go to school anymore, or not turn up, or not go and visit somebody. And we have this sense of being overwhelmed. Now all this sounds a bit miserable, but in actual fact, it's very easy to manage, but it does take a bit of work. Things are happening in the body when we're stressed, and I think it's really important to remember that, because nothing that happens in our mind is separate from our body. Our body and our minds are very connected. So when we're upset in the head in any way, like anxiety or stress, our body will be having a reaction. When we're sick and our body's doing something, our minds will also be having a reaction. So they don't live independently of each other, they live together. Does that make sense? Yep, okay. So, has anybody heard of adrenaline? Who can tell me what it is? Call it out. Absolutely. Very, very good. Excellent. It is a hormone that prepares our body, as that young man just said, for fight or flight. But there's one more F. Does anybody know what their third word is? Fight, flight, freeze. Very good. So sometimes we want to fight, sometimes we want to flee, we want to run away, and sometimes we just freeze. Our body goes into freeze, doesn't know which way to go or what to do. Okay, oh, of course it's up there. And we have a thing called cortisol in our body that also rises, and it causes our heart and our blood pressure to go up. So when we've got adrenaline pumping and our cortisol is up, we get cold hands and feet often. Our oxygen to the brain is used up. Why is it used up? Why don't we get oxygen to the brain when we're feeling stressed? Not as much. I mean, we get some, but why doesn't the majority of it go to the brain? Can anybody guess? Think about what you need the oxygen for if you fight somebody. What do you need it for? Your muscles, that's right. What do you need the oxygen for if you're going to run? Your muscles and you're running, and your legs, exactly. So the oxygen goes to the heart, our lungs, and our muscles, so that we can get out of there in a hurry if we need to. So the poor old brain doesn't get much oxygen when we're feeling very stressed, which means, of course, that we're not managing our stress very well because we're not thinking very straight usually when we're stressed. So I've talked about those. There we go, it all comes to the muscles so we can get away. And of course, that makes us very tired. So we get this funny sort of sensation when we really want to get out of there, but we're really quite tired. Sometimes if we're stressed for too long, we don't eat well, and we don't sleep well, and we don't look after ourselves, and we sometimes get skin irritations. Things break out on our skin. Okay, so I want to talk to you about how do you manage stress. The three things to remember are, right, here we go. For us to become stressed, there has to be a trigger. What do I mean by a trigger? Someone put your hand up. Yes, some of that.
A stimuli, a very bad situation.
A bad situation. Yes?
A difficult situation, a stimuli.
That's it, exactly. So you have a difficult... Now, with every trigger, with everything that happens in our lives, we get an emotional response. We may not think we do, but we do. So we get an emotional response to the trigger. And that might be fear, it might be anxiety, it might be worry, it might be sadness, it could be any emotion. Now, when we get very good at managing stress, we know that once we feel that emotion, that we have to take a big deep breath, let all the stress go, and then work out what we're going to do about it. If we don't, we're likely to go into an action or a behaviour that isn't helpful. We might hurt someone, we might shout at someone, we might become irritable with somebody. So we have to learn how, at this point, to recognise our emotions following a trigger that stop us doing something that we might be sorry for. Does that make sense? It is about practicing that big deep breath. Whoa, I'm feeling upset about something here. What's going on? Where is the trigger? Because quite often we don't know what the trigger is. So, the best way to do that is to remember that we've got two sorts of brains in our head. We've got a very old brain at the back, which is made up of the pons, the medulla, the cerebellum, all of those various, the limbic system. I don't know if any of you do biology, but there's a whole pile of organs in the back of our head that we call the old reptilian brain. It's very much like, a lizard. They don't have frontal lobes, they don't have cerebrums. So it's reactive, and it's the part of the brain that goes into fight, flight, freeze. It's the part of the brain that goes, threat, 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 do something. And it doesn't think, it doesn't have time, it doesn't have planning, and it doesn't know how to organise itself. This part of our brain, our cerebrum, is the bit that goes, woo, what's happening here? Let me manage that. So it's about how do we engage those two parts of our brain so that when there is something that makes gets some reaction from the back brain, the front brain steps in and goes, hang on a minute, let me see what I can do about that. And that's where that big deep breath comes in. When you feel something in your body, you take a big deep breath, get some oxygen to the brain, blow it out, and then think. So that's one of the first steps in looking after stress. And we call the cerebrum our conscious brain. So it's the one that's in the moment. Okay, that old brain at the back is more likely to sabotage us. When we yell at someone, or we're irritable at someone, or we get angry, that brain's working. And that's not being controlled by the frontal lobe. So we've got to watch out for that back brain because it can sabotage us. It can also lead us to make general statements about ourselves that are negative. And the one thing I would encourage you to do is think about positive psychology. Positive psychology is about engaging with those things that help us go forward in life positively, irrespective of the things that happen to us that are uncomfortable or distressing. So, what we don't want is generalised statements. Say, for example, if you failed an exam, some people might say, I'm no good, I'm a failure, I might as well give up. These are very blanket statements, very overarching statements that we call generalising. They really don't talk to the specific thing that happened. So, in stress management, you have to listen for those dialogues that come in because they can sabotage you and keep you stressed. So instead of saying, I'm no good, I'm a failure, you might say, I'm no good at maths this time, or I failed this exam, but I passed this, and this. So do you see it's about being realistic when you have a disappointment or when you have a failure in life? It's about going, okay, that's one thing that happened, but there's a lot of positive things that I do in my life. So that's the second step. Apart from being aware of the emotion, that's the second step. Listening to those negative thoughts that are big general statements and pulling them in and saying, this time, or this exam. So instead of saying something like, I'll never go to university, what might you say instead? Or let me put it in another way. I'll never go to university because I just failed my maths exam. What might you say instead? Is that an arm up the back? What you say instead? I'll never go to university because I failed my maths exam. What might you say instead?
I think that I will say that that's just one exam that I have failed, and it's not gonna affect me like how I'm going to, like I will keep moving on.
Good, absolutely, absolutely, and that is a very important point. That every failure, remember I talked to you about post-traumatic growth. In our ordinary everyday life, it's the same. That positive psychology. For everything that goes wrong, you learn something. If you take the time to think about it. What did I do that I would do differently next time? So if you fail an exam, was it the way you studied? Was it that you perhaps went out too much with your friends and didn't spend enough time on that subject? What could you do differently the next time? So if you take every failure and turn it into a positive learning experience, you will reduce your stress. And I think that's the third most important thing to hang on to. That you have to have these conversations in your head whenever your head sends you down. You've got to pick it up and go, hang on a minute, what can I do with that will make that something that I can grow from? All right? So thank you for that answer. That was very useful. Right. So, every time we have a thought, it's not reality. It's just a thought. So, you need to challenge every thought you have that's negative and ask yourself, is this realistic? Am I just catastrophizing? Do you know what catastrophizing means? It's a big word. We're making things into a problem when they're not really a problem. Could there be a different answer? That's what you have to do all the time with these conversations in your head that cause you to think in the negative. And what then you need to do is keep it specific to that event. So if you failed that exam, you failed that exam. You haven't failed your whole course. It's not going to stop you getting into university if you do something positive about it for the next exam. So it is about taking all those things and making sure that what you say to yourself is realistic. It's all about a time space. I think that's important to remember too. So if you say, I failed the exam this time, but I passed it last time, so I could pass it again. So it is about putting a little bit of time on the end of it. Don't make it all of the time. So there you go. That's that last big one. Keep listening to those messages in your head that sabotage you, that take you down into negative spaces, and have an argument with yourself about, is this real or is this just one little bit of my life and I need to see what I can learn from it and grow from it. And there are a couple of other things that you can do to help with your stress. So we should all exercise, of course. We've got to keep the body healthy. If we don't keep the body healthy, the brain won't be healthy. So keeping that oxygen pumping and making sure there's plenty of food for your brain. Being assertive. Does anybody know what I mean by assertive? No? Okay. When people are assertive, they are very clear about what they are thinking and wanting to do, and they're not afraid to say so. But they're flexible enough to listen and invite the other person to have an input. And then, together, people can work through things. People who aren't assertive tend to go, I want to do that and that's all there is. Or they might want to say, I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that, and they don't want to have conflict. They don't want to have that discussion with another person. People who are assertive can say, I'd like to visit the International University here in Ho Chi Minh City today. Is it possible, hun, that you would like to go? Do you think we could have a conversation about this and maybe we could go? So it's about starting conversations and not being afraid to talk about how you think and what you're feeling. You've got to eat well, you've got to sleep well. And time management. Now this is something as a student is often hard for you. Time management. Time management means you have to plan your day. So if you know you're coming up to an exam, you have to make sure that you put aside time to study every day. You need to put time aside to sleep, to eat, to see your friends and to study. And sometimes when big exams are coming up, you have to say, I can't see my friends, I have to study. So it is about managing your time and also about relaxing, making sure you have time out to clear your mind, relax your body. So, the end take-home story is stress is not a bad thing if it triggers enough adrenaline to make you think about how you might do things differently. Make stress work for you. But if your stress gets too high, remember, talk to someone, go and share your feelings with maybe your senior teachers or your teachers. You may need a bit of help to get over some of those hurdles. But on the whole, stress is not a bad thing if you manage it well. Thank you.
So, I'm sure that you must have some questions. Please raise your questions to the Newcastle University or to the student. Please raise your hand.
So I have a question for Dr. Lin about stress. Many students nowadays, we're in our teenage, so we are facing a lot of problems, and many students don't realize that they are facing mental illness. So can you explain to us the difference between just stressful events and stressful feelings? The difference between stress and anxiety disorder or depression.
Because teenage life isn't easy. You're growing out of childhood and into adult life. You're not independent, you still rely on your parents a lot, but you still want to go out with friends, and yet you still have to pay attention to school and to developing the pathway that you're going to have for your careers. The difference is, stress is like what I've explained there today. Stress is feeling all of those things, but when you put the management things into place, like good time management, relaxation, eating well, sleeping well, and listening to your internal dialogue, you bring your stress levels down. Although there are some, however, who even though they try to do that, their stress levels do not decrease. And matter of fact, the stress levels can get worse. These people are more vulnerable to becoming depressed or having anxiety that is extreme. And it is important if you are around your friends who seem to be like that you give them support and you encourage them to talk to someone. Because people who do have depression and anxiety that is not being reduced by good management often don't notice it themselves. It's often their friends who notice it. So I think it's really very important if you notice one of your friends is not traveling, is not very well psychologically, that you then support them, tell them what you notice, suggest that they get some help. And maybe you tell a trusted adult, maybe your head of school or someone in counselling, you have counsellors here at the school. Yeah, so you share maybe that if you're really worried. Now, and I think that's probably the best thing that you can do as teenagers, is keep an eye out for each other. Because often it's a very, very stressful time and people don't know starting to slip downwards. I hope that helps.
So, is it possible for you to push your adrenaline to a point that it will benefit you?
If we recognise what's happening. The trouble is that if you leave it too late, the adrenaline can go whoosh, and then our brains don't think very clearly. We come into the fight, flight, freeze. So it's a fine balance. A little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of stress is good to motivate us and get us going, but too much will often make us not be able to function well.
Yes. Too many stress nowadays. I would like to ask is about in teenagers. Nowadays we have a lot of relationship in different ages. So how does relationship affect us in our brains and our life?
Okay, yes, teenage life is full of this, isn't it? Okay, there's nothing wrong with girlfriends or boyfriends. Okay, but it is about being able to be assertive with your girlfriend or boyfriend. And that assertiveness means, I can't see you today because I've got to go and study. But, remember the time frame thing? But, let's make a plan to meet at the weekend. So you don't just say no, okay? It's like, but I hear that you want to spend time with me and that's great. But I can't do it now, but I could at the weekend. So you offer an alternative. So it's about managing the relationship through assertiveness. Being able to say, I can't, I've got to go and study, but I can see you at the weekend, or I can see you tomorrow night. Yeah? Okay, so that assertiveness and being open, talk it through. Yeah?
Can you correct yourself?
What is stress from our teacher?
Deal with the stress from the teacher or something like that, is it right?
Okay, so you mean teachers who put a lot of pressure on you? Is that what you mean? Yeah. Okay, now let's go back to assertiveness again. You say very respectfully, thank you for your concern, or thank you for pushing me, but here is my plan, here is my time management plan. I'm studying this at this hour and this at this hour. And so again, it's about that communication, letting people know early if you're struggling. That's important. Your teachers need to know if you're getting behind, but they need to know early. Don't leave it too late. Yeah? Yeah? And so if they're pushing a bit hard and you're struggling, you need to have a conversation with them early. Don't leave it till the exam time. Yeah. Okay, that's no.
Thank you, Prague. This means that you should have a very clear plan for your study and you have to follow step by step. Don't be late, something like that one, so you will lose on the track from the teachers. Thank you. My name is Charlotte, and I have a question. I have a friend that's very depressed and he wants to kill himself. What should I say to him?
Wow, that's a tough one. Yes, yeah. Now, the first thing to remember is you are not responsible. People will make choices in their lives that will distress us, that you'll be angry about, and you'll be disappointed about. But people will make their choices. But what you can do is let him know that you are worried about him, that you care about him, and that even if he doesn't want to be your friend anymore, you're going to tell an adult, a teacher or a parent. So I think that is the most important thing to remember for all of you, is that if you have a friend who you think is suicidal, listen. If you have a friend who you think is suicidal, it is important that you risk the friendship. They may never talk to you again, but if you save their life by telling someone who can give them some help, that is the best thing you can do. Right? It's very scary. It takes a lot of bravery. Yeah.
It's more like the person I want to help is not suicidal, but instead she just denied any advice or help to get a sister and a friend. If I suggest her to seek for professional help, she will listen to that. So what is the best way to do so that she's happy? Stressful. She has stress and she might be have some issue with her life right now. But she clearly doesn't listen to anyone else.
You know, when somebody is very distressed and they are not, and you can see that they need some help. The trouble is we don't always know people's life stories. And often, you know, what happens is there can be something going on at home that is traumatic. There could be something going on somewhere else in their life that is traumatic. And unless people themselves recognise, there's not a lot we can do except stay supportive. I think for teenagers, what is important is that you don't stop your friendship with people because they don't listen to you. Because at the end of the day, it's not about us, is it? No, it's not important that they like us or don't like us or take up with us. And so it's about stepping back. Once you've given your advice, just staying supportive, always being there. And people have to come to their own decision making in their own time. But if you've got good supportive friends around you like you, yeah, the chances are they will make the right decisions eventually. Just be patient with people and let them do it in their own time. Because they are the sort of people who might be more at risk of suicide or harmful situations. Okay, so just stay there as a friend. Don't worry if they don't take your advice. You know, everybody has to make a decision about their own life. So you wouldn't want somebody telling you what to do, would you? Unless it's helpful, you take it on board, but you still would make up your own mind. Yes. So I think you have to think like that when you're giving advice to others. That I give you my advice, I think it's the right thing for you, and let them take it in and mull it around, chew it around in their brain, and eventually they might come to some decision that's helpful. Does that help? I just want to say to you, we've had some very important questions here that are very worrisome. Teenage life is not easy, but remember, I was a teenager, all your teachers were teenagers, your parents were teenagers. Most of us get through it very well and come out the other side and grow. So I think the thing to remember when you're worried about friends or even yourself is one step at a time, just one small thing towards managing your stress is important, and most of us will go on to grow into amazing human beings. When I was a little girl or a teenager, I never imagined I'd be an associate professor. My father was a train driver. So I never for one moment imagined that I would rise to becoming an associate professor. So the thing is, stay positive. Don't get too worried about education. Most of us in a lifetime, you know how quickly everything's changing, especially in the IT world. Most of us will have 2 or 3 careers in a lifetime. So this is just your first career. Keep that in mind. You might become a teacher, you might become an engineer, you might become a psychologist now, but in 10 years' time, you might train in something else. So it's about just having patience with yourself and being full of hope for the future, because life is full of hope. A lot of good stuff out there. All right.
Okay, I just want to say thanks for your time being with us today at the Asian International School. To say very meaningful to all the grade 12 students, very important student at our school. So I would like to say thank you one more time and I'm back with it to all of you. Please give them a very big hand for the very informative today.